The morning began like any other on The View, with the studio brimming with anticipation, the audience abuzz with chatter, and the hosts taking their seats as the cameras rolled. On this day, the guest of honor was none other than Robert De Niro, the legendary actor known not just for his extraordinary body of work in film, but also for his sharp, outspoken views on politics and society. As De Niro walked onto the set, he was greeted with thunderous applause, his reputation preceding him. With his signature calm confidence, he took his seat at the round table beside Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Sarah Haynes. From the outset, it seemed the conversation would follow a familiar path. Some light-hearted discussion about his latest movie, reflections on his storied career, and perhaps a touch of humor. But beneath the surface, there was an undercurrent of tension, a sense that something more volatile was brewing, just waiting for the right spark to ignite it. De Niro began by discussing his new film, a gritty drama that had already generated Oscar buzz. He spoke passionately about the role, about the challenge of portraying a complex character, about the collaboration with a young and talented director. The audience listened intently, captivated by the stories from a man who had become a living icon of cinema. Laughter erupted when he shared anecdotes from the set, moments of levity between scenes of darkness. The conversation flowed smoothly at first, with the hosts offering praise and curiosity, their admiration for De Niro's craft shining through. But then, as often happened on The View, the discussion turned to politics, a topic that De Niro had never shied away from and that Goldberg, too, had strong opinions about. The mood shifted, subtle at first, as Whoopi posed a question about the intersection of celebrity, activism, and responsibility. De Niro, in his familiar direct style, began to share his thoughts. He spoke of the duty he felt to use his platform to call out corruption, dishonesty, and cruelty when he saw it. His words were forceful, his tone unwavering, as he described the state of the nation in stark terms. The audience reacted with scattered applause, some nodding in agreement, others shifting in their seats as the conversation grew heavier. Whoopi listened carefully, her expression thoughtful, her fingers steepled before her on the table. When he finished, she leaned forward, her voice steady but firm, and asked whether De Niro believed that constant public criticism, especially when delivered in such blunt terms, might sometimes do more to divide than unite. She questioned whether the rhetoric had become so heated that it left no space for dialogue, no room for reconciliation. Her question was not an attack, but it landed like one, and De Niro's demeanor hardened in response. What followed was a verbal duel between two giants of American culture. De Niro defended his stance passionately, arguing that there was no room for soft words in the face of injustice, that calling out wrongdoing plainly was a moral obligation, not a choice. His voice rose as he spoke, the controlled fury that had electrified so many of his film performances now spilling into real life. Whoopi countered with equal passion, insisting that the goal must always be to bring people together, to foster understanding even in the face of disagreement. She urged De Niro to consider the impact of his words, to recognize that shouting into the void might feel good but rarely changed minds. The exchange grew sharper, their voices overlapping, their points clashing like waves against rock. The studio fell silent, the audience caught between admiration for their conviction and discomfort at the tension filling the air. As the argument escalated, De Niro's frustration became more visible. He leaned forward, his hands gesturing emphatically, his eyes blazing with intensity. He spoke of the dangers of complacency, of the cost of silence, of the erosion of values he had seen over the decades. He accused the media, the political class, and even elements of the entertainment industry of enabling the very forces he railed against. Whoopi, refusing to yield, pointed out that anger without strategy was often self-defeating, that the message could be lost in the heat of the delivery. She reminded him of the power of dialogue, of listening, of building bridges rather than burning them. Around the table, the other hosts tried to interject, to soften the edges of the clash, but the energy between De Niro and Goldberg had taken over, leaving little space for anything else. At one point, De Niro slammed his palm against the table, not in rage at Whoopi herself, but in sheer exasperation at the state of the discourse, at the sense of futility he felt. The sound echoed through the studio, drawing a collective gasp from the audience. Whoopi remained composed, her eyes locked on his, her voice quieter now but no less firm. She expressed respect for his passion, but urged him again to think of the consequences of unrelenting outrage. De Niro, breathing heavily now, shook his head, his voice hoarse as he insisted that the time for niceties had long since passed. The argument, raw and unfiltered, had become about more than just politics. It was about two worldviews colliding, two approaches to the chaos of modern life that could not find common ground. Finally, the moment came when De Niro had had enough. His chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood, towering over the table, his face flushed with emotion. He pointed toward the cameras, toward the audience, declaring that he would not apologize for speaking his truth, that he would not dilute his words for the comfort of those unwilling to face hard realities. The studio fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Whoopi, still seated, nodded slowly, her expression a mix of sadness and respect. The producers, sensing that the situation had spiraled beyond recovery, cut to an unscheduled commercial break as De Niro turned and strode off the set, leaving behind a stunned panel and an audience unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. The screen went black, the words "will be right back" flashing across as the crew scrambled to regroup. When the show returned, the mood was markedly different. The hosts tried to resume the broadcast, to shift to lighter topics, but the tension still hung over the table like a storm cloud that refused to break. Whoopi, with characteristic grace, reflected briefly on the exchange, emphasizing the importance of hard conversations and expressing hope that viewers would take away something more than just a spectacle of the clash. Clips of the incident spread like wildfire across social media, igniting debates of their own. Some praised De Niro for his unwavering conviction, his refusal to soften his stance. Others lauded Goldberg for her poise and her insistence on civility even in the face of fury. News outlets dissected the encounter, replaying it endlessly, each frame examined for deeper meaning. In the days that followed, the fallout continued to ripple. Opinion pieces filled the airwaves and the internet, some declaring De Niro a hero of free speech, others accusing him of fueling division. Whoopi's measured responses won admiration, her commitment to dialogue cited as an example of how to disagree without demeaning. De Niro, for his part, released a short statement through his publicist, expressing regret that the discussion had grown so heated but standing by the substance of his remarks. He continued his press tour, appearing on other shows where the View incident inevitably came up, offering thoughtful reflections on what had transpired. Goldberg addressed the moment in a later episode, urging viewers to focus on the issues that had sparked the debate rather than on the personalities involved. Behind the scenes, those who had been in the studio spoke in hushed tones of the intensity of that morning. The crew reviewed the footage again and again, some shaken by the rawness of it, others quietly proud that their platform had hosted such an honest, if painful, exchange. The moment became part of the show's history, a reminder of the unpredictability of live television and the high stakes of discussing issues that cut to the core of who we are. For the audience, both in the studio and at home, the clash remained etched in memory, a symbol of the challenges and the necessity of confronting difficult truths. The clash between De Niro and Goldberg became not just a headline, but a lesson in passion, conviction, and the fragile art of dialogue. And as the world moved on, the memory of that day endured. It became a reference point in conversations about public discourse, a reminder of how quickly passion can ignite into conflict and how difficult it can be to bridge the gap between deeply held beliefs. Both De Niro and Goldberg carried forward, with their work, their legacies intact, their respect for one another tested but ultimately unbroken. In the end, the fiery moment on The View became more than just a television spectacle. It became a case study in how we speak to one another, how we disagree, and how, even in the heat of argument, we might still find a way forward. The incident served as a powerful reminder of the value of dialogue, of the need for both passion and patience, and of the enduring challenge of finding common ground in a divided world. If you'd like, I can expand specific moments into dialogue, or add more emotional depth, or create a version fit for narration. Just let me know.